Stop and frisk violated the rights of some Black and Hispanic New Yorkers and ordered the installation of an independent monitor to oversee the practice. The City Council has also passed new legislation that includes a so-called racial profiling bill and a new NYPD Inspector General to watch over the department. Would you have voted for that legislation, and do you think the new oversight goes too far, not far enough, or do you feel it's appropriate? And just remind everyone to please stick to their 3-minute time allotment. We're going to start with Mr. Sweeney.
When you speak about stop and frisk and the way it was conducted, it was against everyone who has been affected their civil rights. I have a lot of friends that are officers, retired detectives, but one thing I'm concerned about is the 42 people that were just murdered, the homicide yesterday in East New York. So maybe we can take the frisk out of stop and frisk, but there has to be some mechanism that we can get control of our community. Because no business is going to come into this district, and that's why this district suffered for many years because of the crime. Business was nervous coming in here, residents are scared to walk out, the seniors got to pick certain times to come out the street, come out their homes. It's not good. It's truly not good. Had a shooting in my park. And the kid did not go home and get the gun, he had it on him. The legislation that was passed with the Inspector General, it's good stuff. Would I have supported? I definitely was, the pros and cons. I don't think no one should be violated, but we got a problem. And if it's, I met a woman that came up to me and said her nephew was just murdered six days ago or whatever, and she was supposed to come tonight because I told her to come. And she asked me, am I for a curfew? We have to really look at our community, our young men, our behavior in some respect. I'm not blaming them, but we have to have some law and order. And the 40 murders between the Trayvon Martin verdict came down, where everybody took to the streets nationwide, and right after that, we had that many people killed. I'm very concerned about the quality of life of the folks that are doing the right thing. We have a small percentage of people that are doing it. For years in Bed-Stuy, you would hear the gunshots, we got immune to that. District has changed. And I think stop and frisk was created because they were forcing people out of Manhattan, people that don't look like us, they came in the district, they wanted to make them safe. But I believe if we can get a hold of our young folks, change the way we think and view the police, they're there to protect us. I am not giving anybody a hard time that carries a gun, but the method and the harassment was a civil rights issue. And I watched the city council hearing on stop and frisk of so many people, countless, from all walks, from people that are in the life, the lesbian community,
30 seconds.
the minority community. These cops were out of control, but they were allowed to be that. I think the next commissioner coming in is going to change. We have a ruling now that will no longer allow that to happen. The Inspector General is going to be a plus. The Civilian Complaint Review Board needs to be implemented, put back in place. And I think we need, once all that has happened, we need to start having a serious conversation about the crime within the district. That's the most important thing that I'm worried about.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Would you have supported?
Yeah.
Of course I would have supported the bill that passed, the 2 bills for stop and frisk. But I'm not going to live my life fighting that. Once that is taken care of and it's off the radar and they stop doing it, what about the young man that got shot, that went in that store yesterday and murdered that store owner? He rode on a bike.
I believe in his original response too, he had said that he would support it. We're going to move it on to Mr. Foy.
I've spent the bulk of my professional career fighting police brutality as a civil rights activist, working with families like the family of Sean Bell. I was the one who funeralized and eulogized for Marley Graham, the young man that was killed by police officers in the Bronx in his home in front of his grandmother and his 6-year-old brother. I would not only support the bills that passed, I would go further. We do need to establish an Inspector General for several reasons. One, we need someone to have real oversight over the NYPD's policies and practices. Up until now, we have not had real oversight, which is why we had to go to the federal courts to get relief from the federal government. The federal government came in and said that the department, New York City Police Department, has been out of order and has been acting unconstitutionally as it related to hundreds of thousands of stops, questions, and frisks of innocent young Black and Latino males. An inspector general could have intervened a lot sooner, could brought some transparency and some accountability to the police department, so that we would have never gotten to the critical mass of hundreds of thousands of us being dehumanized. The second piece of legislation is a racial profiling bill, which allows us to seek injunctive relief from the state if we believe that we have, as individuals, been racially profiled. What that means is that we can sue New York, not for money, but for a change in policy. So those two will go a long way into bringing accountability, but it does not speak to the actions of individual officers. So what we need to do is reform the Civilian Complaint Review Board, give them real independent prosecutorial authority. We need to remove them from the NYPD, where they get their funding from. The Civilian Complaint Review Board gets its money from the NYPD. We need to break its funding out of the department. We need to give the Civilian Complaint Review Board independent prosecutorial authority so that they can independently investigate and prosecute officers for their individual actions. We also need to increase the number of police officers on the streets. Now, that may sound a little counterintuitive, but the reason that the police currently are being so aggressive is because there are not enough of them on the streets. They are not visible enough, they are not where they need to be, and they cannot prevent crime from happening at their current force levels. They can only respond to crime. And so what we need to do is empower the police by expanding the force, which will reduce much of the aggression, and we need to reform and revamp the Civilian Complaint Review Board on top of the independent Inspector General and the racial profiling bill.
Thank you, Mr. Foy. Mr. Cornegy.
So it's been widely popularized that I don't agree with the bills in their entirety. I believe that the Inspector General represents a growth in government that we don't need to do. I believe that we have the CCRB and we have the Chair of Public Safety for City Council, who is mandated with the oversight process to be able to deal with some of these things. And I think that the Inspector General represents kicking the can down the road. So they're saying that that should be funded at a tune of about 1.9 million. And I've always suggested, where does that money come from? Because they're not printing any more new money in the basement at City Council. So as we do our annual City Council budget dance, which is where we're going to take money from after-school programs, where we're going to put money, we're going to take money from the closure of senior centers. I believe that that conversation begins and it becomes much louder. So we're not supposed to be growing government, we're supposed to be reducing government and making those people that are responsible for what CCRB started out the same way. CCRB was designed to mitigate those circumstances where police officers were being abusive in doing their duties. So now we're suggesting to kick the can down the road and not hold those people that put that office together accountable, but create another office to now look. And finally, I believe that what happens is you begin to create, it sets a bad precedent, and every time something doesn't work, you just create something.